episode of Winning the Moment, we have the most special guest I could ask. I've got my dad, Phil Adent, here, and he's going to share his story with you and how he was brought up. And what's so interesting and fun about that is I've known him my whole life, and I heard stories today I've never heard before. And there were some stories I thought were true that I found out were false. So make sure to listen to the whole episode. There's a bunch of laughs. There's even a little bit of tears, but you're going to love it. Thank you so much and enjoy the show. All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Winning the Moment. This is episode 4, and today I have a special guest, none other than my dad, Phil Adent. So it'll be exciting to share with you the man behind my adolescence and really the person who helped mold and shape so many of the beliefs and stories that you find in Winning the Moment. So, Dad, thanks for being here.
Oh, I appreciate it. Appreciate the comment. Yeah, it was good.
Excited to be on a podcast?
Yeah, at my age, these never existed. So
Yeah,
it's going to be very interesting.
Did you ever think you'd be on a podcast?
No. You know what? To be honest, I only ever listened to yours. I've never listened to anyone else. Well, Rogan. I've listened to that guy in the car with you, but that's it.
Yep, that's your only exposure to podcasts. But you listen to sports shows your whole life. That's basically the same thing.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah.
Just
it's a little different being on the other side of the table.
Yeah, just a couple people telling stories. Yeah. So I think it's important always to start with the backstories. You want to tell us a little bit about who you are and what makes you feel?
Sure. So I was born and raised in St. Joe, Michigan in 1956. Lived there my whole life until I was 18 years old. And then at 18, I came back from Christmas vacation, and everyone in high school was talking about, oh, where are you going to go to college? Where are you going to go to college? We didn't have a lot of money, and so it was like I had no idea what they're talking about. And so I'd have discussions.
Wait, so all through high school you didn't?
No clue.
Never thought of it.
It was just a progression of life.
Never thought about what you're going to do after high school?
Second grade, fourth, whatever. No, never, just like pretty much it was whatever came my way I would do. I didn't have no planning or any thought into after this because for 18 years, it's just the same thing over and over. You just go through the routine. So then it was thought natural progression, something would come up, I would do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So came back from Christmas vacation and everyone's talking about where they're going to go to school. And I'm like, geez, what are you guys talking about? And they're like, well, where are you going to go to school? What are you going to study? And back then, so that's in 1975. So people then, a college degree is something that people went to do as the next step in your life.
Yeah.
At that time, it was just seen that, we're going to go to school, we're going to progress our education, and we're going to do this, and we're going to become this, and this, whatever. And we needed this, meaning the paper that you get when you graduate, to become successful.
So pretty much everyone you knew was going to go to college.
I can't think of one person in my mind that was not going to go to school, either at the local community college or a major university.
Wow.
I had friends that went on football scholarships and things like that, so their life was planned. But for me, I would just sit. We had a hallway that we always sat on the heaters, and we would sit there and talk. And I'm like, oh, Tony, where are you going? I'm going to Central. Chip, where are you going? I'm going to Michigan State. I'm like, well, when did you guys start planning all this? Well, in the fall. I'm like, oh, man, and I thought, well, I played football. I wasn't that great. So I went to Coach Mullenkamp and said, hey, you think maybe I could walk on at Michigan State and see if I could play? And he goes, oh, and I'm like, okay, that's a no. So it's like, okay.
I never heard that story.
No, that was true. I asked him, I said, and he just, he wasn't my favorite person in the world. But anyway, so I decided, okay, well, then I have, financial. And unfortunately, when I was 12, my father had died, so it was a pretty rough go for our family because my mom had never worked because that's the time when the wife was at home, raised the kids, things like that. Even though our house payment was only $86, it was a struggle for her to make it.
Wow, $86.
$86 a month, and they fought to make it, no doubt.
Man, I actually always thought your dad died when you were 8.
No, 12, 1968.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I've been telling that story wrong forever then.
Well,
now I know.
Well, if you pay attention to my stories, you'll get them right. But anyway, so it was a struggle to do that. But, there's financial aid and things like that I could get and receive. So I decided that Mike Ryan, a friend of mine who played college football for Central Michigan, I went to Central Michigan with him and Tony, and stayed with Mike, got a room with Mike and everything, and went there for one semester, and just decided like this was not for me. I mean, this is not
school in general, or
school in general. I didn't want to study. I didn't want to put forth the effort. I had no idea what I wanted to become.
Yeah,
it was just like, I guess I haven't evolved or didn't put any thought into it. it was just like life will lead me where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah.
And so stayed a semester, obviously didn't make it. Grades weren't that good. And then I just came back home. And at that time, my mom had remarried and everything. So I went to work with my stepdad.
So did she not marry Chuck until after?
She married Chuck in 1973. So probably like 6 years after my dad's death, something like that. I remember.
So you were like graduating high school at the time.
Yes, I had one year left, year and a half left when they had gotten married.
So Grandma had to figure out how to survive with you guys up until that point with just herself.
By herself.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was, my sister had moved out. Kathy, she was already living on her own. Kenny was in the Reserve Corps, so he was, basically in California. So it was just me living in the house with my mom.
Didn't you say that you used to put ketchup and water in a bowl for tomato soup?
Nah, that's bullshit. I never came up with that. No.
You did.
We didn't have that kind of money, but still, we could afford a Campbell's soup.
Okay,
you got to remember that's maybe a nickel back then.
Yeah, well, you definitely told me that you did that.
Yeah, well, I was just trying to impress something. Looks like it worked. But no, so came back, worked construction. And at that time in Michigan, humidity, if no one's ever been there in the wintertime, is extremely cold. And I was just not enjoying that. We're going out in cold weather, breaking ice. And it was just like, nah, man, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing physical labor my whole life. I had seen the toll that it had taken up on Chuck because he was a brick mason for his whole life.
Yeah.
Basically, he was out of school at, age 10 doing that type of work for his dad. And I'm like, I'm not going to get stuck in this. So decided that, I got, when Chip Borey, a friend of mine that went to Michigan State, came back down, I talked to Chip, and Chip's dad owned an Ace Hardware business, and they had some influential friends in St. Joe. So what we did is we sat down and brainstormed at the time, but we didn't know what it was. We were just talking, and came up with the idea, well, he had a friend that poured all the concrete for all the nuclear plants in the United States. And I'm like, man, let's talk to this guy. I forgot his name. I said, let's see if we can get a job with him. So made some connections, and he goes, yeah, no problem. You guys come down, we'll come down, put you in Louisiana. You can work the summer, make some money. So I said, okay, cool. So I decided that's what I was going to do, and Chip was going to do it with me in the summer. And so I bought a van and got a van and decided, well, I'll go down and get all the groundwork laid out for us before Chip gets out of school. We'll have a place to live and stuff like that. So
how much did you buy the van for?
Oh man, the van was probably $2,700 back then.
Okay.
Full Chevy van, half-ton van. The ones that you see on cartoons now, like what is that show, Scooby-Doo, where they all make them into the conversion and things like that. So that was my plan, but I never did it. But anyway, so I bought the van, drove down to Louisiana, which was probably, I'm just going to say 24 hours.
Yeah, long drive.
I have no idea what it was, but it was a long drive. And
and how did you do that with like a map? Because now we would just use
our
phones.
We didn't have Yelp.
So how did
Yelp. I mean, we didn't have Waves. We didn't have GPS.
Yeah. So how did you know how to get there? Did you have an atlas in your car?
Piece of paper, man. Map. Opened it up. Drove. Said going to St. Louis. From St. Louis, I'm going here, down there. Just I
always think, how did you find restaurants and places in new towns? Like how would you get to a hotel if you were driving to a town you'd never been to?
We didn't do that. We never. I mean, back people don't travel like they do now on the weekends to go for an excursion or something like that. When we went, it was camping.
Yeah.
We camped. So going to a restaurant was saved for prom or weddings or things like that. Or, maybe Friday night you go out as a family, but we never went out and had those types of things. So it was like, I didn't worry about the restaurants. I had one location where I went to every Friday, and that's all that I wanted to be. And that was
all right. So you've got your map. You're driving to Louisiana.
Driving to Louisiana, get down there. It's a holiday. I'm going to say it was 4th of July. Pull into the lot. Guards are standing there guarding everything, and I'm like, hey, I'm friends of so and so, and I'm here to get a job. And guy looks at me and he goes, "You're not going to get a job here." I'm like, no, you don't understand. This is all set up. I mean, I'm going to work for him. We've talked to him and everything, and this is a done deal. My friend Chip's coming down. We know him, personal friend, blah, blah, blah. He goes, no, man, you ain't getting a job here. And I'm like, really? And he goes, no, you're not. And I'm like, oh. I said, okay then. And
so what'd you do?
Turned around and I stayed at some cheap dive motel. Scared to death, man. I was in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I parked the door. It was a motel, so it opened up to the outside, the door. I parked that van within 6 inches of the door so no one could get into my room because I was so scared. And then drove home and just...
Wait, did you not call Chip?
No point. We didn't have cell phones.
Yeah, but there had to be a payphone.
Well, it's over. It was done. I mean, it wasn't going to happen. So there was no relevance. I
can't believe you didn't at least call Chip or Chip's dad and say, hey, I'm here. This guy says I can't work here.
I would have got the same answer and probably wasted 45 cents. So it was like, it's not going to happen. So
that's crazy.
No, so I drove.
Did you ever find out why you didn't get the job?
Oh, I know why I didn't get the job. I was told at the time when I pulled the van in.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you want to know.
Yeah, because you're white or what?
Because I was white. I was told I was the wrong color.
Yeah.
And I'm like, in my hometown of St. Joe was all white, and across the bridge was Benton Harbor, which was completely black.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, segregation is something that I grew up with, and the Black Panthers and things like that. So I knew segregation.
Yeah.
That was the first time I was ever on that side of it.
Got it.
Not really segregation, but prejudice. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And so I drove in just a terrible rainstorm. I can remember I was sitting in the car just letting loose and everything. And I'm like, I got to go to school. I've got to go to school. That's my only option now because I was getting Social Security from my father who passed away. So that would help me with some of my schooling. And I always wanted to go to Colorado State, which is in Fort Collins, Colorado.
What made you want to go there from Michigan?
I wanted to be with nature. I wanted to be in just in nature and do things with nature, hike, camp, things like that, because we had done that our whole lives. Fort Collins was in a great place. It was a really nice little small town at that time, but the problem was it was very expensive. It was $4,200 a year to go out of state, which now is not probably even a semester at Utah
it's probably
Tech.
a class.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, all right. So then I started thinking, I'm thinking of people that I knew in high school, and I'm like, oh, Jim Starks. He goes to University of Wyoming. I said, that sounds cool. I'll check that out. So I came home, got a job for the summer, started researching University of Wyoming, found out that it was like
What did research look like back then?
Well, research was pretty much you call whoever you knew and said, hey, how much you pay for going to school? And he said, it's $700 a year. And I'm like, that's it? And so I'm like, okay. And
wow, what a difference for your generation that they were able to get schooling for $700 a semester. I don't know what school costs now because I never went, but I know it's expensive. In fact, Kyle said his schooling cost $34,000.
Yeah.
So for him to go through school was $34,000.
I mean, and now you got to think about the commitment when people decide to do something like that. Is it really, I mean, you're going to school for a certain purpose. The paper means doctor, lawyer, something that is behind it. It's just not something like, I don't even count business. Yeah. Business is the business. To learn business, you go out and do business, and that's how you're going to be successful in it. But so anyway, talked to him. It was $700 for the semester, which was $1,400 for the year. It was like from 12 to 15 credits. You could take as many credits as you wanted and things like that. So I said, cool. So summer job, wrote my letter, got accepted, went out to University of Wyoming. I showed up 7 days early before school was started because I made a mistake and wasn't paying attention. And it was an 18-hour drive. So I get to the campus, there's nobody there. And I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? So I go in and I talk to some people, and I'm like, come on, man, just let me in my room. Let me in my room. And they're like, oh, we can't do it. And I'm like, look, what am I going to do? Sleep in my car for a week? And finally, I got someone to let me into my room. So I stayed in the dorm all by myself. And at that time, the dorm that I was in, Crane Hall, all the students were basically from out of state. And so it made it really nice because none of us would go home during the breaks. We would go other places or go to friends' houses that were close by.
Just because it was too long, too hard.
It was an 18-hour drive to go back, and no one wants to drive back in the wintertime. I did that a couple of times, and that's just
What
terrible.
did you think of Laramie when you got there? Did you think, oh, this is awesome, or do you think this sucks?
It's Laramie. If no one's ever, I mean, it's a beautiful town, and you're in the mountains, and I like the mountains, so I really, really enjoyed it until the wind started blowing, and then it's like, oh man, this sucks.
There's no mountains in Laramie.
Yeah, Voodoo up,
but not like not close.
not too far away. I mean, let's say, how long is Vitavue? Vitavue is 20 minutes down the road. Yeah, it'd be like here to go up to Zion, something like that. It wasn't too far. I mean, but there were mountains. And
but you thought you got there, you thought, this is cool.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I wanted. It was affordable. It was something I could do. And then, same thing happens again. You deja vu back to high school, Christmas break, and what classes you taking, Phil? I'm like, what? I'm like, what classes are you going to take? I'm like, oh, hell, I don't know. I'm like, what are there? And they're like, man, look at the book.
Well, so you didn't pay attention to anything.
I just went by the seat of my pants.
Wow.
I had no idea. I
didn't realize you were so uncalculated.
Oh, no thought. Just like I just went. I mean, seriously, it was Cookie. We called him Cookie. I sat down with him and I'm like, well, what are you taking, man? He goes, I'm going to take Parks and Recreation. I said, I like Parks and Recreation. I'm going to take Parks and Recreation. And I looked at some other things and there was like statistics and some of the things you need to take. And I said, nah, shit, I'm staying away from math. I'm not doing that. So then I signed up and took the classes that those guys were taking for Parks and Recreation. And that was what I did for a while. And then.
So did you know anyone when you went there?
I knew absolutely no one.
Wow.
Well, I knew Jim Starks. That's wrong. I'm sorry. I knew Jim from high school.
You knew one person.
One person, but he was in a fraternity, and I'm not a fraternity type of guy, so we never really associated when I was out there. Yeah, so I just
Why
stayed
weren't
there
you
and
a
hung
fraternity type of guy?
I was a GDI.
What's that?
Goddamn independent. Which means I just do what I want to do, and I don't let anyone tell me that you have to do this or whatever. It's like, no, I'll do this instead. So I went into Parks and Recreation, and I was at the University of Wyoming, so that's 1976. It's getting long, an hour. And so then basically, stayed there for a while. Up and down. School didn't work out, basically because I didn't go to class. So you can't go to class, you can't pass, get bad grades. Took a class where the professor wrote the book and the guy knew every word in the paragraph, whatever, on page 217. It's like, I'm not going to pass this class. And so took me quite a while, decided to get my act together. And 10 years of college, I graduated with a degree in Parks and Recreation. And
Wait, so you really did go to school for 10 years?
Well, I went home for a few months, took a semester off. Yeah, I had a good time.
Why did it take you so long? Because you kept failing your classes?
Failing or lack of effort.
Yeah.
You could say failing. I would say, like you wrote in your book, it was a failure, but I learned from it.
Yeah.
So, and then my friends were still there. I met a lot of friends, some from Michigan, some from Chicago area and things like that. So they hung out. Then we decided to stay during the summer, and that really turned into some good things. And we had a lot of time there. And then one of the families moved up to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. So we would go up there and visit them a lot. So it was a good time. It was an experience, it was 10 years of my life, but 10 years I would never get back because I got to do things that people nowadays have no idea what it is. There's places like Shell Creek, which is up in Wyoming, where we were, fly fishing off of it's just beautiful area where we were just out and no one was around us and we didn't have to worry about things, so it was really cool.
A lot of freedom.
A lot of freedom.
Tell the story about when you guys went to Vegas.
Okay, so this was one of the problems. I did some gambling when I was in college, and I didn't gamble, but I took people's bets, and so I was basically a bookie. And sometimes I had some pretty rough times. I can remember walking down the street thinking like, I owe this dude $1,500. I don't have it. And so, he came to collect, and I said, what, let's just give you a credit, and we're just going to let it ride and see how well you do. And
why didn't you have the money?
Shit, I was poor. I was in college. I had no money, I was expecting to make money.
So
off
you were
this fool.
spending it. So he would bet with you, and then you take his money and spend it.
No. Let's go back. So he won in one weekend. He won $1,500 in bets.
Okay.
And instead of turning the bets into the bookie I kept those bets. And he won those bets. So on Monday, he comes in and says, hey, Phil, I won $1,500 from you. I'd like to collect. And I didn't have $1,500. And if I had it, I wasn't going to give it to him because it's gambling. I'm like, all right, well, let's think about this. So we go back and forth, and I'm like, let's just let it ride. We're going to wait let's play this weekend again. There's a couple good games coming up. Let's see what you do. And I said, I'll give you a $2,000 credit if you want. So, I'll give you 500 more on top of it. And hoping that he would lose, which he did. And so, but anyway, so gambling was a big part of college. And then every spring break, we would go into the student financial aid office, and we'd go in, and they had things like short-term loans. So you would go in and you'd make up a story of a hardship, like, oh, I want to go see my mom, I want to go back to do this, my girlfriend needs it, whatever. You just come up with the story. Go in the financial aid office, and they'd give you $750 for a short term, like 6 months. So we would all go into the financial aid office, fill out the applications, get $750, and then we would come down to Vegas from Cheyenne and gamble. I can remember one time, now this is when it was older, so the Sahara was still there. I sat in one chair playing $5 blackjack for 15 hours straight. My guys I were with went to sleep, came back. I'm still in the exact same chair. So yeah, gambling had a big influence on some of my
So in that 15 hours, did you win?
I didn't lose. I was still at the table. Got a lot of free drinks. Got a lot of nice people,
What about you're leaving out the part of how you got home?
Oh, that's a different story. So you got to remember, this is every spring. We would do this every spring break for like maybe 4 or 5 years in a row.
Did you usually come home with the $750 and winning? So
hell no. No. It's like, no. And we would take like 12, 15 guys down with us, pile into a truck and just have a good time. But you come home with some money. Then one year we decided, okay, we've lost enough. What we're going to do is we're going to make envelopes, and we're going to put a stamp on the envelope, which is back in the day. If people don't know what stamps are, they can look it up. But, and we would put an envelope with our name on it. We say, we're going to get X amount of dollars, and we get X amount of dollars. We're putting it in an envelope, and we're sending it home. So when we get home, that money is here for us waiting.
You would just mail cash.
Mail cash. Just put the cash in the envelope, send it home, and then when we got home, the money would be there. So that was our bright idea for 1 year. So we were doing it, and we were going back and forth, and we never sent one envelope home. We got down to our last $50, and we decided, okay, Randy and Bill are going to play blackjack. We're going to play $25 a hand, which back then was a lot of money.
Yeah.
A lot of money. And we're going to sit there and we're going to say, we're going to play blackjack. So
would you say that was like $100 hand today?
I would almost say more than that, to be honest.
Wow.
I mean, it was a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, so we would sit down, and so Randy, I think we were at, where were we? I think we were at we were at Caesars. So we were at Caesars, and Randy sits down at the table, puts his $25 out there, and then we're just watching, and all of a sudden Bill comes up and sits down and puts it in first base, which is the first place on the table. We're like, what the hell are you doing? And this was the last $50 we had. So we look at Bill, and it's too late. His money's on the table. And if you don't understand, if they both lose, we're out.
Yeah, right.
But if Randy lost, we still had a chance because we had Bill's $25. Well, they lost. So, I mean, many experiences. So that time we had to call up Bill's mom and said, well, we had $1 left. And
I was going to say, because I remember you laminated it. You laminated it in your wallet,
that dollar.
like my whole childhood.
I do not know where that dollar is. I laminated the last dollar. I took it from him. I had the last dollar. I laminated it, and I wish today I knew where that dollar was, because that is this honest truth. That's all we came home with was $1.
So when you were acting as a bookie in college, where'd you get the lines? Just in the newspaper?
No. So I had a friend in Michigan that I would call, and I would use him. He would be my bookie. And let's say if a guy put in a bet for $100 and I didn't want the bet, I would push it off on him. Okay. So like, let's say you're my bookie, and I'd call you up and say, hey, Code, I got, $100 on the Packers -4. Okay. He'd take it. He didn't think it was anyone else's money. He thought it was my money. So that's how it worked. If I didn't want to give the bet up, if I thought, well, that's a stupid bet, I'm keeping it, then I would keep the $100 bet against the Packers or something like that.
Okay, so if you thought the person making the bet was going to lose, you would take that bet.
Correct, which was stupid because you don't know who's going to win or lose. That's why, it's just not.
How long did you do that for?
Probably five years.
Wow.
Half the time that I was there.
But how did they even know the lines? Like, how would that guy know on the Packers -4? Where did the lines exist back then?
Paper.
In the newspaper?
Yeah. I mean, if they would be in the paper and they would be able to publish them. Plus then too, back then they still have services like they do now, like not DraftKings and things like that, but there were betting
You could
services.
like call a betting line and they'd tell you what the lines are.
You'd call the guy, the most famous guy was called the doctor. You put in a phone call, he'd tell you take this, and send him money, and you'd subscribe to him and things like that. So they had not as advanced as it is now, but it was there. It was accessible to anyone who wanted to do it.
And so then you got your degree in Parks and Recreation.
So I got my degree in Parks and Recreation. After all that was done, there was one part too. I can remember that one time I sat down there at the Sahara. It was one of the earlier times, and I lost all my money the first day, all of it. And so I called my mom up and I said, "Mom, you need to send me some money." Right away on the other side of the phone, I hear, "Oh, Philip, what'd you do?" And I'm like, "Mom, it's my money. Just send it to me."
What do you mean it's my money? How'd you?
Well, I had money in the bank at home. I had a bank account, so I had money in the bank, and I told her just send me the money. So yeah, it was fun. That like I said, those are stories and things that you're never going to pass up, and the opportunity to do them was there, so we took them. So get the degree in Parks and Recreation, and when it was all said and done, that was in 1984. So you can see it was quite a timeline. Sitting there.
You're the longest person to ever go to the University of Wyoming without a doctorate?
Oh, no, I saw a lot of people there.
I don't think
It was
so.
a lot of fun.
We should look it up. There's probably not a lot of people who went to school that long.
Let's just move on. So anyway, we're get the degree and everything like that. I actually, the true story is I never really earned the degree.
What do you mean?
So I had 3 credits left, and my professor was Dr. Wilder, true name. And I took a summer class from him, and I had to read a book and answer some questions like that. And it was a summer course. It was 3 credits would have graduated me, okay? So I go in his office, sit down with him, make the agreement. I'm going to do this, and everything. And then never read the damn book. Never did a single thing the whole summer. So I'm 3 hours short of graduating from school. And I walk into his office, and outside the wall are the grades. I'm like, I look up, Phil Adent, C. I'm like, hell yeah, I passed. So I'm sitting there thinking like, well, this dude can't do anything now because he turned the grades in.
Yeah.
I graduated.
Yeah.
So I walk in and go into him and say, "Hey man, here's your book." He goes, "Oh, thanks." And I said, "Yeah, I appreciate it. I worked hard for the C," and walked out.
So what happened? He just I
graduated.
I know, but he just gave you a C?
Yeah, he just went down the list and said C, B, D, F, whatever. I don't know what he did, but he gave me a C. So I took it. So yeah,
that's incredible.
That's a true story.
Okay,
true story.
so then you had your bachelor's in Parks and Recreation.
So then I had my bachelor's in Parks and Recreation. And at that time, John Denver was big. Everybody wanted to move to Colorado. Colorado's called the Green State. Everybody wanted to be a greenie. Everybody wanted to be in Parks and Recreation. So there were no jobs. No jobs. So after 9 years of hard work, I had nowhere to go. I was sitting here thinking like, this sucks. And so I'm like, okay, so I started thinking about it. And again, I said, this time I did plan it out. And I say, what is open that I could walk into and get a job? And education came up. And I looked at it up and I said, well, I could have an elementary teaching certificate in a year and a half, go to summer school, go to a year of school. I said, I'm doing it. And so then I went in and became, got my certificate in elementary education within a year and a half. And when I got out, I had letters coming from all over the country because I was a male. So this is 1985. I had letters coming from all over the country offering me jobs sight unseen. I can remember Clark County sent me one for $28,000, just come down, we'll put you into a school. And I'm like, man, this is fabulous. So, after 10 years, it all paid off. I could go where I wanted to work, which most people can't say.
And you started in Cheyenne teaching?
Started in Cheyenne because at that time my wife's family was in education, and Stan, her brother-in-law, got me hooked up with Dan Pratz, who basically was my mentor. and he got me a job at a lower income school called Cole Elementary in Cheyenne, and I went there. I was a fifth grade teacher for a couple years, and and enjoyed it and things like that. And I coached all the sports, and I've always been a sports person. And Wyoming, grade school, fifth and sixth grade, get to play sports.
That's such a great
grade.
thing.
Yeah,
It sucks they don't do it other places, because like learning how to play organized sports and represent your school at that age was like such a highlight of elementary school. And I feel like it helped us develop competitively and learn teamwork and all of that at such a younger age, where it's like my kids don't have, like, it's only city sports. So we had our school sports, plus we had our city sports. And I wish they had that here.
Yeah, I don't know why. A lot of states, you got to figure that that's Wyoming, so they're pretty back in the age too. But they had, it would be boys football, girls basketball, boys basketball, girls volleyball, and then the fourth graders even got to run track at the end of the year, which was just phenomenal. So it was, and like you said, I totally agree. Back then, it gave them a development of sportsmanship, competitiveness, learning different things, and we didn't give out participation trophies. I mean, you went in and you worked for what you won and what you received. So it's always been, and I've always done that my whole life. Obviously, in your book, we've talked about that, coaching you and doing things with you and taking you on road trips which was not part of the school, but part of the
education.
Yeah,
was
and in fact, beneficial.
I talk a lot about losing and not being good at sports, so you can let everyone know that that's a real story. I was not good.
Oh, no. I mean, there's a couple places in there where I would go to a friend's house of mine every Friday night and take Cody with me. And John had two twins that were extremely good at soccer. I mean, these
Patrick
kids,
and Sean, if they're listening.
Patrick and Sean, just amazing. They were really, really good. And, to be honest, when we played, I'll tell you how good they were. We played T-ball. And so these guys, I don't know, how old do you think? 5 years old. Let's say 5 years old. Go with that story. We're playing T-ball. Sean's at second. Patrick's at shortstop. I can't remember who was at first. We turned a double play.
Yeah, we were good.
5 years old. These kids are turning double plays in T-ball. So go back to the story. I would go over to John's house every Friday and have a few drinks with him. And Cody and the boys would out being playing soccer. And this is one thing I think that really has developed Cody and the things that he's at now, is that these guys would beat the living shit out of him every Friday. Every Friday, they would just take the soccer ball and just pound Cody's ass, and to be honest, Cody never quit.
Yeah.
He stayed with them every single minute, and he stayed there, and he just took it, and he developed into being much better than he could have ever been by me teaching him how to kick the ball around, because he lived it. And he understood that, if I want to be better, this is what I've got to do. So,
well, and we've talked about it in other episodes too, is you as my coach, you didn't let me just play because I was your son. No. I had to earn the opportunity to be able to be on the field, just like everybody else, maybe even more so.
Right. Well, I think you told that one story where he took you out of the game.
Yeah. Little junior Indian 6th grade championship.
I put you in for one play because someone was hurt and then took you right back out.
No, you just wanted to tell Brent Dorr the play. That's what it was.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But I mean, that's life. That's reality. That's what you do. It's totally different time, but I mean, that's what we learned. And I think if you look at it now, what's instilled in some of you guys that are doing these businesses together in the group at Vibrant, every single one of them has had that sort of a development where, things weren't given to them. They had to work to get them. So it's very important.
Yeah, it's important for kids to learn to lose. You can see that in Cash, even at our soccer practice. You help me coach soccer and football with him now, which is pretty cool to have 3 generations of us out there in the field. But like even now when he loses in practice, in the scrimmage at the end, just throws a fit because he's got to build those muscles of losing. But what's amazing is, remember, he didn't run. So the losers at practice, they had to run 2 laps. Yep. And my son lost and threw a fit and didn't run. Yeah. And so I told him, you owe me 2 laps. And sure enough, the next practice, he's like, I owe you 2 laps, Dad. Yeah. And which he ran it.
Which was pretty good because it was an argument the whole way home. He's not doing it. And we kept telling him, like, hey, like your dad says in his book, you take from your losses and things like that. But Yeah, that's good. That shows, though. That shows a lot of character that he went out the next day and did it.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. And it was him too. He brought it up. He's like, I owe you 2 laps. And so he ran. And he was a little bit embarrassed because the team who lost was like, Cash, because he won the next time.
Right.
So like, Cash, why are you running with us? He's like, because I wanted to. But it was good. He held up to his end of the bargain. So so then you got into teaching.
Got
and
into
you did
teaching,
that for
I think I did. I always give different years.
Yeah, that's evident that you change your stories because these are all new to
and
me.
I never made the ketchup and water. I don't know where you got that.
You
Mom.
definitely told me that, and you told me you ate cereal with water.
Oh yeah, that's no shit. That's not.
Okay.
I remember in college, the only opened the refrigerator once. All there was a full chicken, and in the cabinet we had nothing except jam. So we took the strawberry jam and rubbed it all over the chicken, and that's all we had to eat was that day. So, life lessons. So I taught. I'm going to say I taught for 12 years. Mostly, I taught a couple of years in Cheyenne. Then we moved to Arizona, and then we came back to Cheyenne, and I finished my teaching degree there. I went and got my master's degree because at that time in Wyoming, with all the mineral rights and things that they had, education was a good place to be in. And I really wish I was still in it now because, man, I'd be having some nice checks from the state of Wyoming come across my board. That's for sure.
Do you really wish that though?
I do for the money.
Yeah, I know, but like, you had so much life in between there. and did so many things.
What I mean though is like the teaching. I mean, now as you go in through it, and things have changed so much, and I'm always tell people that I'm glad I was born when I was born because parents now, I think, are going to have a rough road with what the world is transforming into. And yeah, teaching, I couldn't do it because when I was a teacher, nowadays I couldn't do it because when I was a teacher then, I was a hands-on teacher. For example, if we had 20 spelling words, I would ask a student to give me a subject, and then the subject, every single word, I'd put that into that subject. And I was a hands-on teacher, and now,
Yeah, you were like really sought after teacher. Like parents would move. That's what's crazy about like having sports in elementary schools. I remember people would move their houses so they could compete at like the in the sporting program that you and what was the 5th grade teacher?
Mr. T-Lander.
Mr. T, yeah. The sports program that you and Mr. T created, parents would move into your school district.
More than once.
Yeah, so they could play on. Didn't you have a kid in 6th grade who could dunk?
Yeah.
Chew?
Yeah, Chew. Yeah. Brian Chew. He was a big kid. Yeah, he could dunk the basketball. He was one that came in. We had another kid, I can't remember his name, the redhead kid. Stocks came in,
Yeah, because you had Stocks too. Yeah, Stock played D1 at University or Air Force University.
Yep. And then, so it was, we were, one time Mr. T and I tried to collect on how many wins we had compared to losses. And it was probably over 1,000 victories and less than really 15 defeats.
Yeah.
We were that dominant.
It was a powerhouse.
It was a powerhouse. We would come in at the track meet at the end of like in the middle of May, at the end of the school year, we'd come in and we'd have 2 buses. And I would get the kids riled up. And as soon as we came over this one hill in Cheyenne, we would start singing that we are Hobbs, we are Hobbs. And I tell you what, we got off the bus and we already won the track meet.
Yeah.
Everybody was just like, oh man, this is going to be good. And we kicked their asses.
Well, I remember too, because you got a track built at Hobbs.
Yeah.
So like at an elementary school, you had an actual track where like I ended up having to go back to Davis. Like I think that was when he must have stopped teaching, and we just practiced like in the playground.
Yeah.
But Hobbs had an actual track.
Hobbs was probably the only elementary school. That's the school I taught. Hobbs Elementary was the only elementary school in the whole state that I had gotten a track built for us. It was a 400-meter track, and it was asphalt. It was pretty.
It was nice.
It was nice. It was nice, no doubt about it. But anyway, teaching probably 13 years, and then the 80-20 rule, whatever you want to call it. I thought that I had 80% of this, and I thought this other 20% looked really good. And my wife at the time's brother had opened a convenience store and wanted to build a car wash. So I said, I wanted some of what he had. He had a nice big house and RVs, and we didn't struggle. Yeah, he had Corvettes, so we didn't struggle. But it was like I want some of that, the other 20%, and we did that for a while, and that unfortunately didn't work out. So I was basically out of a job. I can remember sitting in your bedroom on the bunk bed once, just sitting there like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. And then going back to the Morans, the soccer boys.
Well, the auto wash was in between that though. That was a colossal.
Oh yeah, that one was that was bad, man. That was bad. That was like so. So when I was running the car wash, I managed the car wash, and Jim was the owner. I would have this guy that built the car wash. Carl would come in and say, "Hey, I want you to talk to so and so from Denver. He's going to come up and look at your car wash, and I want you to show him some things." And I said, "Okay, no problem. I'll talk to him. I'll tell him how it goes and everything." So guy would come up, and I would show him the way around the business and how the car wash work. And if he ended up buying from Carl, Carl would come back and go, "Here, this is for you." I'm like, "Oh, okay," and he would give me some money, which I didn't give to Jim, and I kept doing that. And one day Jim said to me, "Why does Carl come back all the time and see you?" And I'm like, "Oh, he just likes me." He goes, "It's a 2-hour drive from Denver." I'm like, "I don't know." He just comes up and sees me. He goes, "Well, you see a lot of people here. You're showing them my building." I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, it's my building that you're showing them." I'm like, "Yeah, it's your building, and I'm just showing them however everything works." He goes, "But it's my building." And I said, "Well, basically you're trying to get to a point. What's your point?" He goes, "Are you getting paid for this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am." He gives me money. I'm not going to lie to you. He gives me money. He goes, "Well, that's my money." And I said, "No, it's not your money." I said, "I'm the one showing him. You built the building. You built the business. I'm the one going out and selling it for Carl to make Carl more money." And that was pretty much the end of that.
That's how that ended?
That's pretty much how that ended. Well, no, that is how that ended. Yeah, it was just like, he didn't
bad.
Bad. Yeah, bad. Well, most things with family and bad, and business.
I remember, so I threw my retainer away as a kid, and it was on chili day of all days, because I had to take my retainer out for lunch to eat, and I put it on my tray, and I threw it away, and I was out playing basketball at recess and realized, oh shit, I don't have my retainer. And I knew knowing my dad, I was like, oh God. I went back into the cafeteria and I dug through the trash can on chili day of all days to find my retainer.
Yeah.
I didn't find it. That retainer cost $185 and I had to earn it back. And I earned it at that car wash, shoveling snow, cleaning it out.
I mean, that's a lesson. I mean, like you said, if you, in your book, you bring up a lot of good stories of your childhood and what had developed you into what you are. And that's just one of them. I don't think that was in the book.
No, it's a great story too.
It is a great story.
Because you only paid me like $5 an hour. I doubt it actually, because minimum wage back then was you probably paid me $2.50 an hour.
Yeah, you got
I worked for a long time. I have a lot of good memories running out the car wash though.
The car wash was excellent, man. Car wash was
I remember
really, really
running
good.
upstairs. There was like that part above the office, and you guys always had cash, so I'd get cash. I'd go to the gas station and get a candy bar and cleaning out like the bays. I enjoyed that.
And you were pretty young too at that age, but it was good. But that's how that ended. That one ended that way. So,
and then you went to auto wash.
Then I went to auto wash,
and then that's when things got really bad.
Yeah, that's when it got bad. So these guys were one of the ones I had talked to when they come up, and they had was it auto wash or Blue Sky? They had their own.
It was auto wash.
It was their own chemicals that they were selling, soap and wax and all these other different things, and they had met me and were impressed and said, "Hey, we want you to come work for us." And I'm like, "Okay, what do I got to do?" And they're like, "Well, you just drive around the car washes and you show them our stuff and you try to get them to buy our stuff." And I'm like, "Okay." So basically, I really didn't have a boss. I would just drive around Colorado.
And I remember thinking
Wyoming.
at the time when you got it, you were really excited. Like, this is going to be huge.
Yeah,
this is a big
because
deal.
it was going to be, I thought it was because they were really a good company. And, I thought like, man, this is going to be profitable. And it was, like I said, I just drove from car wash to car wash. Wasn't really a schedule. Got to do what I wanted to do, and I didn't think that bad. And then one day the guy comes up and goes, "Hey, I need the keys to the truck." And I'm like, "Well, what do you need the keys to the truck for?" He goes, "Because we're taking it back." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, you're done." I'm like, "Oh man!" And that was it. That was the end of that job.
I think I was in fourth grade at the time.
That got bad, because then. Yeah, we had nothing. We had nothing at that point. Just moved into the new house.
Yeah, I think at that time,
Stetson.
I'd only seen you cry twice.
Yeah.
Once when Mr. Pratt's died.
Yeah.
And then the other time was when you'd gotten fired from auto wash and you didn't know what you were going to do, and you went to interview at that job where it's like the troubled kids.
Yeah.
Was it called Tribune? Something like that.
Is it Triumph?
Triumph, yeah. And like the kids like went to school in like a prison bus.
Yeah.
And like the teachers were in cages and stuff.
Yeah.
Bad.
It was not.
And I remember you
called
were
the box. We used to throw them in the box.
You were crying in the formal dining room of that house with Mom, and I remember thinking at that point, like, "Oh shit, this is bad."
Yeah, but went to soccer, and then John's sister had owned a Merry Maid franchise in Cheyenne, and they wanted to get out of it because they had owned it for a few years, and they said, why don't you buy it from us? And looked at it and said, okay, own your own business. So we decided to do that.
How'd you buy it? We didn't have any money. How'd you buy it? Do you
I just
remember?
took a loan off of someone. I can't remember what it was. It was I thought it was like $45,000.
I was going to say, I thought it was $30,000.
Or did I get the loan?
Young.
I think I got the loan from Service Master, which is the owner at that point. I'm not sure if they're sure anymore. They are, but who owned the franchises of Merry Maids. So I maybe took a loan out with them.
Okay, so they would finance you buying a franchise.
Yeah, they financed the franchise. There you go. They financed the franchise, and then we just had to make monthly payments back to them. So yeah, we owned that one in Cheyenne, and man, I don't even remember how many years we ran that, but that weren't really
a long time, because then you bought that building downtown that had like the apartment
Pershing
complex with it.
Yep.
And you,
yep. That worked out to be a pretty sweet deal. So that was good. And then it was going.
And then you bought the one in Corpus Christi.
Bought the one with Corpus Christi with a business partner, and then decided to move or look at St. George, because if you don't know, coming to Vegas every time during my school year, we would drive from Laramie and we would come through St. George. And the gorge was our favorite part of the whole trip. Yeah, that was really good. We would stop at the gorge and enjoy ourselves.
I remember being in the car with you when you told me it was for sale, because it was in Cheyenne. I was a freshman in high school. And I think you were going to the bank or something. You're like, hey, we could do this. And you said, it's ultimately up to you, because you're in high school and you're playing sports. And so if you want to do it, then we'll do it. If you don't, then we won't. And I remember saying like, yeah, let's do it. Like, I'm excited. I want to live somewhere where there's palm trees and the weather was nice. And it was, I'm so glad that we did. Because if we didn't, I wouldn't be here, obviously.
No. I mean, it would have been, that was a good turn, because you and I came down in the beginning of summer, like in June, so you could play basketball at Dixie. And you and I stayed here, bought a great house. And yeah, that was a good turn. So we sold the Corpus Christi one back, had the Cheyenne one.
Did you make money when you sold the Corpus Christi one?
No, did not make any money off those. No. I mean, he just took it, and that was basically it. It became his problem after that.
Oh, okay.
So then we had the Cheyenne one, and then we had the St. George one. So we moved down here, ran the Cheyenne one remotely, which at that time was pretty unique, because, man, I'm trying to think of the program that I used, which is probably not.
Oh, it was like there, where you could get onto the computer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I can't think of what it was.
That still exists. Yeah. So you'd like remote into the desktop.
I'd remote into the desktops, and I could see everything that they were doing and like that. And Tammy ran that for me up in Cheyenne. And then that was in what I think it was.
Because at that point, you guys were like really doing well.
We were good. We were good. We were in a really good spot. And then 2007, 2008 hit, and people decided to clean their own toilets, and we were in big trouble. And so we lost a lot of business and made a decision to buy the Merry Maids franchise in Greeley, Colorado. It was a prosperous one at the time. It was basically the guy that got me into Merry Maids, Ken and his wife. And so we decided, okay, we looked at the books, everything looked good, borrowed some money from a couple individuals and bought the Merry Maid franchise. Got up there within the first week, the books were cooked, and she was an accountant, and they were supposedly making $15,000 a week. They were making like $5,000. And based on the projections, it was like, oh shit, we're in trouble. And yeah, so that didn't end up well, and basically ended up losing all three of the franchises. Because if Service Master, if you don't make your monthly quota or year quota, whatever, they can have the right to come in and revoke the franchise.
Oh, so you lost all three?
I lost all three. Yep. And still owed $100,000 to one individual, which basically what I did is I gave him that franchise. I worked it out with Service Master for he could buy that franchise from $100,000, and they sold it to him. So that wiped out my debt with him.
Who was that?
Locust. Tammy, who was running the Cheyenne office, her stepdad.
That's right.
Yeah, he had some cash.
What a crazy time. Yeah. And you had young kids at the time. Because, I mean, Hannah and Sarah were like 8 and 5?
Not even. We moved in, 2002? Sarah was 2, 3 at that time.
Wow.
And that was, maybe 8 and 5. 8 and 5 sounds pretty good.
And so what were you thinking when that happened?
find something else. Gotta
What's
do something
amazing
else.
is you were still, because when you started at Wireless Advocates, you were still running the Greeley Merry Maids.
Right. So you had got me hooked up with Wireless Advocates, and then I was running Merry Maids on Monday, and then I would go to work in Thornton, Colorado, which was an hour away from where we lived in Windsor, Colorado. I would drive that hour one way each day and worked at the kiosk in Thornton, Colorado with Wireless Advocates. That's where you had got me hooked up with them. And then stayed there and rode that, became the district manager. Yeah. So if I didn't have that, which I guess was pretty good in hindsight, having that job and working it, I probably worked it for like 6 months while I still owned the Merry Maids, and that really helped us out.
Yeah.
That worked out well. Drive wasn't fun, especially in wintertime. But
but then ended up getting everything going back in the right direction.
Yep. And that just turned everything around. And then the cell phone business was good. I mean, it was
and then
good
you
for
got
us.
promoted, went out to North Carolina. Then I brought you back when I got recruited by the company here.
Yep. So what was that? Go Wireless? Well, you guys
No,
said
My Bullfrog.
Oh, yeah.
At the time, it was My Bullfrog.
That's right.
Then it got bought by
Go Wireless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had left before that, but you worked for Go.
Yeah, I remember when you said you guys are going to start having kids. We're like, your mother at the time was like, okay, we're going. I'm like, oh man. So we left that job, which
Yeah, but I got you a sweet job.
Yeah, that was a good one. I mean, you got Zach and I both good jobs.
Yeah,
that
was crazy.
They were paying us.
I can't believe the salary you guys got for what you did.
We didn't do anything.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
we golfed on Fridays a lot.
We did a lot of things because those guys were up in Idaho. And so we would know when they're coming down. But yeah, I mean, that was a sweet. Well, they had 3 people. They had 3 basic managers there.
Yeah, running 7 stores.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah. Well,
okay, so let's get into the questions. So the first question I have for you is, and you can answer it, a win can mean whatever you want it to mean, but what's the biggest win in your life?
Finishing the St. George Marathon.
Wow. That's amazing.
That was big. That was painful. I finished it. Even though you passed me.
So those of you that don't know, I ran that with my dad. That was like a thing we both wanted to do. And my goal is to finish it in 5 hours. And he's a faster runner than me. So if we're not running 26 miles, he'll beat me every time. Any half marathon, any small distance, he'll beat me. So I had lost him.
Oh yeah,
well into the race.
We started off I think it was like mile 2. I just said, "Code, I can't do it," and I took off.
Yep. And so I never saw him again until I got to Diagonal, which is about a mile out of the finish line.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, and I finally saw him walking, and so I stopped to walk with him, and I was like, "I'll just finish with you." And you said, "No, you got a goal, you got to go." So I finished at 5 hours and 1 minute.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I mean that was big just because.
And how old were you then? That was like, what, 60?
Yeah, I had to be 60, probably. I mean,
yeah, that's right.
6 years
Because Cash is 6, so yeah, you're 60 years old.
Yeah, so yeah, I would say that was a big one.
And then hopefully we'll run this one together.
Yeah, we'll see. I haven't got out there yet.
I said I was never going to run another one, but I think I'm ready.
Yeah, it would be something good for us to try to do. I mean, right, but we got to get on it. I will be under 5 hours. I will be under 5 hours.
I'll be under 5 hours too. Okay.
I'll be under whatever you're under.
That's where the competition comes in. So what's your biggest loss?
Oh, just failing as a father for my family and not providing. So when you lose jobs like that.
But did you ever really not provide?
I mean, there were times probably when the money wasn't there. I don't know. I mean, that's big because you don't want to see your family suffer. I mean, you'll do anything, a parent will do anything for their kids to make sure there's food on the table. So those
Yeah, but you say that like there wasn't food or like.
Well, no, there was. Like I said, you're not going to.
You always figured out a way to make it work, even though it was obviously challenging. But it's not like there was never a time that you guys lived in a box.
No,
like you always figured it out.
I don't really think that much about my losses. I've had a lot of losses in my life and learned from them, but I can't really say that there's one that if I thought about it for a while, I'd probably come up with 10 different answers.
Well, I think that's what's so interesting about the question is everyone answers it the same. They usually don't have one because once you get far enough away from the loss, and it's not relevant anymore. Or you look back on it and you think, I wouldn't change it. Just like when you lost all that money as a kid gambling, obviously in that moment, if you could say you could go back in time and undo this, you would say yes.
Yeah.
But now at 66, you wouldn't change it because it made you who
made
you
who
are.
I am.
And
Exactly.
and it gave you a story, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's really interesting. Okay, so then you've read Winning the Moment.
Mm-hmm.
What's your biggest takeaway from the book?
I think the biggest takeaway is that for me, knowing the book, I think there's a lot of stories that you didn't tell. And the biggest takeaway is I think you should write some of those stories and the things that you've gone through. Like when you opened up the cell phone business, you've said it afterwards, but not during the book, that you worked there for 365 days.
Yeah.
And the work that we put in. I mean, anyone at your age that stays in one building and that long a period of time, and not take a day off in a year, is a tremendous feat.
Well, and then after work, I went to a con and sold for
Yeah,
Wyndham.
I forgot all about that stuff. Yeah.
So I could survive.
I mean that, and just, you know, it's an honor to be part of the book and to have a son that wrote a book. Never thought that would happen. Never thought you'd see the sales that you saw. I mean, that you've gotten.
Yeah.
And it's led you down other paths.
And now we're on a podcast talking about it.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the takeaway is awful proud that you wrote it. Awful proud.
Thanks, Dad. Okay, so then I always like to ask people about their mentor, and you mentioned Dan Pratt. So do you say he was your biggest mentor in your life?
In education, yeah, I would have to. Yeah, he was. He was my biggest mentor. I mean, I was close to that guy, and he died unexpectedly. And it was like,
How did he die? I don't remember.
he had a respiratory infection.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so like, you know, it was in the fall.
And he was the principal at Hobbs at the time,
He was-
right?
He was my first principal at Cole Elementary. When I first got a teaching job, he was my first principal, and we had a really, really, really good rapport. I remember one time I'm teaching class, and all of a sudden over the loudspeaker, you know, it's like, Mr. Adent to the office, Mr. Adent to the office. I'm like, oh man. So I asked Miss Lyons to watch the class. I said, Pratt wants me, so I got to go down there. I go down there, and he goes, have a seat. And I'm like, oh man, what did I do? He goes, it's here. And I'm like, what's here? He goes, Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. I'm like, oh man. So yeah, he was a good guy. He was really good. So
Well, I remember, didn't you get in trouble too for being so loud? Because they could
well,
hear
that
you
was
down
in
the
Arizona.
office?
That was in Arizona. So in Arizona, the classrooms are set up away from the office. So basically not pods, but the office was a long ways away. And I never liked to have my door shut. I always liked to have fresh air coming in. So when I taught and things like that, but then Stifler would come down.
Stifler?
That's his name. He would come down and he would say, man, you got to shut your door. You're just too loud. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, you're way too loud. They can hear you in the office. I'm like, okay.
So of all the jobs you've had, because you've had a wide range of jobs, which one did you enjoy the most?
Oh, selling, man. The one off the top of my head, I'm trying to phrase it for people the right way, was selling with you and Zach, the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, that was just.
That's not really fair though, because that was almost not a job. It was almost like a hobby.
I worked. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was where I've got.
But
the
that wasn't
most
like
enjoyment out
a
of that.
career. So like
No.
something you did for like your main source of income.
Well, right now I would say I work at the Home Depot and I absolutely love it.
No way.
Yeah.
You like that more than anything else that you did. Even being a
It's-
district manager at Warehouse Advocates.
Well, the district manager has its perks and things like that, but there was a lot of work to do that. You managed over, you could manage up to 200 people. You had a lot of deadlines and a lot of pressure to do
Stress.
things like that. Stress, yeah.
Yeah.
And now at the age that I'm at now, it's like this job, I just love it because I walk 12 miles a day doing it. My day is over quickly because it's 8 hours, but it's done because I'm constantly busy. So yeah, I mean, I just love this job because it keeps me busy and gives me something to do. The other jobs, great jobs.
What was the worst job then?
The worst job when I was 16 years old, I worked at a grocery store in St. Joe called Zeke's, and I had to wash dishes. And I lasted 2 days, and I said, this is not for me. And I left.
Okay, so next up is routine. I know that you have a routine in your life. How important do you think it is to have a routine, and what's the routine that you use?
So a routine to me is very important because it basically defines what you're going to be and how successful you're going to be for that, either that day or that time. So my routine that I'm doing now at age 66 is that I'll get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'll drink my greens. And after I drink my greens, I'll go into exercise room. I'll lift weights for an hour. And then I have this acupuncture mat that I'll lay on, and I lay on that and meditate for 20 minutes, get up, make breakfast, feed the dog, go to work, come home. After I get home, nowadays it's too hot here in St. George to take him out for a walk now, so I'll have to change it a little bit. But then I go and get on a elliptical or a rower for an hour and do an hour of cardio. And then
would you say you're in the best shape of your life now? Because I know when I was younger, you did a lot of physical stuff, but probably not 2 hours a day.
No, not. I'm definitely in the best shape of my life.
What started that for you, do you think?
Wanted to live.
Yeah. And as you got closer and older, you realized,
as you get older and you stand up once in a while or kneel down, it's like, oh man, give me a minute. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I've got grandkids, and it's like, I would say I've added an immense amount of time of years.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah.
At least a decade of your life.
Yeah. I mean, you don't give me credit for what my biceps look for, but it's like, it's okay. That's the competitive.
I was actually just thinking your arms look pretty good. That's funny.
Damn good. That's
okay.
Cool.
So last question is, how do you define success?
I'm going to define success and what people do, what my family members do after I'm gone.
Oh, that's good. Getting emotional.
Yep.
So your legacy then.
My legacy.
And how do you feel like that's going?
One's doing really well.
Oh, man, that's
sorry,
good.
Girls. Got to be truthful.
Oh, we got time. Okay, well, that's it. Anything else that you want to leave us with? Anything you want to talk about?
No, I appreciate you having me on. I wasn't really sure how well it was going to go. Like you said, the hour went by really quick. It's great.
Isn't it hard to believe it's been an hour?
No, I hope you write something else, because I think you got a lot to do, and I think you're gonna have a good situation come out of all this. I'm very proud of that.
Thanks, Dad. Well, that's the idea behind this, is get all the data for the second book, right? So now we can take all this data from all these amazing people and then use that to put together the next book. Well, that's it. That wraps us up. Episode 4 of Winning the Moment. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow us on YouTube. And if you like what you're seeing, subscribe. And then, of course, you can go follow me at Cody_Adent on Instagram. And then you can buy the book. You can buy the bracelets from CodyAdent.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.